Good evening, everybody. Scott Stevens here with a look at some weather around the country and a few interesting stories around the world where we're finding fascinating or stressful, depending on whether you're in it or observing from afar, weather going on in South America, in Italy. Some good snows showing up in the Alps of Australia, although I don't have that video for you today. That doesn't mean they didn't happen, and they're glad to have those ski resorts opened. However, because of the COVID thing, they're not able to utilize them or maximize the income because of that, and that in many ways is just simply unfortunate. It's an outdoor activity and different kind of mask required. But yeah, we've really given up a lot of outdoor activities that, in my eyes, are absolutely a requirement for people to remain healthy. Straight up, it's best to be outdoors, exercising, getting your vitamin D, and of course, the fresh air. Just from 50 some odd years, that's just how you like to live, not all cramped up inside and behind barriers. All right, let's come on in this and let's look over here because we're beginning to see, and if you've been watching for 10, 15 days or so, we've been seeing some of the signals of fall weather approaching. Now, this is from Eric Fisher on his Twitter thing. He's a meteorologist out of one of the Boston stations, and what he's got animated here is the cool, dry air pouring out of Canada, and he's denoted this by using the dew point. The dew point is the direct measure of the moisture, the content of the moisture in the air. And the drier it is, the more comfortable it is, and certainly the easier it is for the body to be able to sweat and therefore then by evaporative cooling, cool itself. And so as we look through tomorrow, actually later on today and then tomorrow, because this is about 24 hours old, that cool air certainly arrived and continues to push out to sea. So fall is there. Now, Christian from the Ice Age Farmer posted this story, which I thought was kind of curious, about the Chinese using facial recognition for cows. And in that way, you can track fluid intakes, how they eat, some of the behaviors. So it's kind of a very, very interesting use of the technology. And I could kind of see, I definitely can see the upsides to it, but how they've deployed this for humans and then are realizing some of the secondary, the downstream effects of this facial recognition technology. So very curious. This guy, I don't really have an explanation for it. I'm always looking at the sky. I don't go outside without first looking up just because it's habit. But this, is in a very unusual cloud shape, and then when you have flashes inside the cloud, and then when you have a dark object descending out of the cloud, certainly would get my attention, and I would probably have had my camera up there recording this thing, and it's not all that long. Yeah, facial recognition for cows, Robin. It's just that bizarre. But this kind of looks a little UFO-ish, and we saw the one item drop out of there, and then it's like the beam me up, Scotty. The beam is kind of like pulsing. Either it's still connected to the thing that's gone down, but otherwise, at this point, we can begin to see the bulb around which whatever is there is shrinking. So the object is slowly dissipating away. And it's kind of curious how you can have these devices, these ships, these technologies impacting the weather, and more than likely just the water molecule. So you create this cloud, you create this natural cloaking thing. Yeah, very, very strange. Miller Steven 5, if you want to go find that on Twitter. That was posted about 12 hours ago, and it has just almost to 36,000 views. So very, very curious. Yeah, there's that object dropping out of it just so we can see it twice. You can see it coming down, and they never think we're looking, but maybe there's an arrogance that like they're just little humans, and they view us as more like cattle than as sovereign beings on this planet. And maybe it's because we're not sovereign that they feel that they know they can get away with this, because who are you going to call? That sounds like a theme from a movie from the 80s. Who are you going to call to go rectify the situation? All right, we've had Laura across the tip of Cuba, and now begins to advance very clearly into the Gulf of Mexico. There's nothing stopping it from strengthening now. It's definitely going to get stronger. And so now we're beginning to look at Louisiana, where it's likely going to make landfall within about 48 hours. And they're looking, the latest models are kind of pushing it towards the right here along the Louisiana, Texas line through Port Arthur, Beaumont, those kind of regions. Certainly far, far eastern Texas and western Louisiana, so Lake Charles, Cameron, so forth. So winds are going to be strong, 100 plus before it begins to hit the friction and begins to spin down as it begins to move on in. So that's kind of what they're looking at. Every Category 5 landfall in the U.S. was a tropical storm just 48 hours before landfall, which means RI, record intensification, occurred. And I don't like the term because a record happens once. Otherwise, it's not record breaking. You can't have every being record. So maybe that's just semantics on my part. But certainly what he means is rapid intensification, and maybe that's RI. Rapid intensification occurred. Well, this will not likely happen with Laura. The stage is set for potential rapid intensification. Isn't it amazing how things just come to you as you begin to talk them out? Anyway, it's difficult to forecast. Timing will be crucial, but it will likely make landfall at dark Wednesday night. And then this guy just enjoying the ride through tropical storm, now Hurricane Laura. And then he tied this thing down so you can see how turbulent it really was as they pushed on through. And then Extreme Weather Club, just doing a little photography of some of the crazy clouds shown at sunset in his location. And in the video, he's requesting that we all just create this weird cloud club and share with others those weird clouds. And we all know that they're out there. All right, the Fire Center, National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, they've had a few new fires today, number of new large fires, 14 that they're working on. Colorado's got one of those new of the 14, so there's still areas from active fires. It's now 1.8 million so far this year. We've burned 3.7 million acres, which is still well behind the average of 5.144 million acres burned in the year. And there's still plenty of smoke out west. As far as the record heat, if we go to today, record heat forecast and or occurred in Florida, Jersey, along the upper Mississippi River Valley, along the Front Range from Lander, Wyoming to Scottsbluff, Nebraska, in and around Denver at 98 degrees, 88 at Alamosa, and then into the Phoenix area. Tomorrow, same to similar locations, and it begins to kind of wane a little bit, but still the southern latitudes are going to be hot through the end of the week. And then no record heat forecast on Sunday. And then we've got Lander, Wyoming with a record cold maximum forecast next Monday at 63 degrees, kind of an indication of that chilly weather that's coming on in. Hey, Vicki, finally got on. I know we all have to deal with that, with other things going on in life. Devastating storm caused millions worth of damage. This is in northern Italy, in Verona. And this kind of crazy. We've all seen those hailstorms. Colorado Springs here in the States, kind of one of the big ones. But, it's just hail. And then what does that do to gardens? What does that do to cropland? What survives this kind of stripping this late in the season? You just don't need this kind of a weather event. But ultimately, it was devastating for the city itself and left a lot of water, and it was all mixed in with ice. So that's kind of one of the scary things. And then another one of the interesting stories that I found was more than 100,000 animals perished as the intense snows hit Patagonia as they are pulling sheep, digging up the snow, and just trying to rescue the sheep and getting them up and out so they could once again be on their feet and mobile and able to breathe and to live and to survive this incredible event. And there are more winter storms headed for this region. So this is video that I've never seen. This is really kind of crazy how and farmers, they do what they do to save their crops. All right, their crops. Animals are crops. It's the livelihood. All right, highest temperatures yesterday, 120 at Death Valley, and then 36 degrees at 4 miles northwest of Grand Lake, Colorado. And here we have Laura, now at a hurricane with winds right about 80 miles an hour. So a Cat 1 hurricane is 75. That's about when the eye begins to open up, is right at that threshold, and that's why hurricane winds are denoted at 75 miles an hour, is because the eye is beginning to form. As it intensifies, then the eye becomes a far more notable feature. That is it for the Atlantic, and let's come here to show you the path, at least the official forecast, whether that ends up being what it is right there along the Texas-Louisiana coast, and it looks like about 1 a.m. Thursday for anticipated landfall. As we get out into the eastern Pacific, we have a few more events that are kind of disturbances that we're watching. All of them look like they have at least a moderate intensity or moderate opportunity to develop. Yeah, the hail was kind of unfortunate. And buying a used car with hail damage, it can be a really good deal if it's not too bad. If it was salvaged by the car company, there's Laura down there, and then some thunderstorms out west, but still dealing with smoke in California and throughout much of the west. And that smoke has now transited the bulk of the country and is now exiting the coast just ahead of this cool front that is now moving through New England. So there's smoke over Delaware, the Potomac, into northern North Carolina. It's crazy that there's that much smoke out there. And then you can kind of see the circulation getting a little better. We're beginning to see some wraparound thunder showers. That's kind of a necessity. And then still what's left of Marco up there. Here's a close-up on the fires through California as they just keep burning. They keep burning, and we just don't have the labor out there to put on the fire lines. It's not there. There's 20,000 inmates that were available in previous years, and a lot of them have been let out because of COVID concerns. So they're on the street rather than a labor pool. I'd rather be out on the street too if I was one of those guys rather than being conscripted for work. But nonetheless, that's the situation that they're dealing with in California. It was slightly cooler weather. There are more clouds and much, much cooler in Oregon and Washington, but the heat has been pushed eastward. We've got mid 100-degree readings in mid-South Dakota, Pierre, Rapid City, Spearfish, and so forth, at or above 100 degrees. So very, very warm. And New England, a taste of fall in the air as the showers have moved on through and now beginning to clear out and really leaving some very comfortable weather. And some storms in places like Boise had their first rain yesterday in 6 weeks, where they had a really generous early part of the season, but the showers have just turned, like so much of the rest of the West. It looks promising. It looks promising. And then you get one clap of thunder, and then nada comes out of the sky, except for maybe a few spits just to give you that smell of fresh air, but you can't water plants with fresh smelling air. Not possible. So Laura kind of out of reach still, not quite within the radar range of those sites along the Gulf Coast, just not there. And then there's the cool air beginning to surge southward across the Mason-Dixon line and into the Virginias and into northern Kentucky as the sun sets back there. And there's the refreshing cool air with the weak high pressure sitting over Lake Huron, or Lake Erie, riding through there and working its way south. And the bigger push of cool air still remains off to the north. All right, now here's where it gets interesting. I'm going to cheat and look ahead. Okay, all right, let's go back, because this model is still coming in. This is the one that began at noon. They didn't really start rendering it till about 3 o'clock Mountain Time. But what we're watching is Laura, obviously the big guy with the tight black lines. That just means that the pressure gradient is tight, and that looks like a fat Category 3+ storm with 120-mile-an-hour winds or so. But what I'm interested in are these Canadian storms, because for the last 5-6 days now, we've been signaling some cool air coming in from the far northern latitudes. This is painting a little bit of snow right through here through the Canadian Rockies, and then the north winds pushing chilly air through the northern plain states, and then there's another low sitting over the North Texas Panhandle, and so that would allow some of this cold air to kind of slip south along the Front Range of Colorado and then spread out into the plains, this being the end of this weekend. And then this deep Canadian low spins up, lots of north winds behind it, and some very chilly rains, probably a cold rain through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, where Regina, the capital of Saskatchewan, has only seen 11 days above 80 this summer. They've had enough moisture, but they just haven't had the warm weather this summer to just kind of push the crops through. Everything's looking good, but they need warm weather. The same story for the bean crop in Nebraska. We've had episodes of heat, but we haven't had the moisture to go with it. So we're kind of missing. We either have the heat and we don't have the rain, or we have the rain and we don't have the heat. And you kind of need to get the two together to really have one guy I heard today say a bin busting harvest. Where the bins where they put things in to dry just is overflowing. But as we get this storm more like winding up through the eastern part of Canada, there's another one that comes right back in on its heels and then drives another round of cold air towards the end of Labor Day weekend, all through the northern plains. And this is highs that under clouds and sprinkles probably will struggle to get above 52, 53, 54 degrees, along with a fresh north wind. So there's some really, really cool air kind of gathering in place. And then there's a flash of snow that pops up right there in the end of the morning. And so it is definitely heralding the arrival of some much, much cooler weather. All right, I'm going to run this on through. This is this morning's snow forecast. So we're already beginning to see 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot snows beginning to pile up in Greenland as the season has changed. It tends to work down the Canadian Rockies through southwestern Alberta, and then tries to push into Montana. So we're beginning to see the mountaintops up here beginning to whiten up once again. I'm going to put this into the latest run right there, and we'll see if it's anything similar. I got to animate it. Come on, don't be lazy. There we go. And see if we still are painting the snow in the western part of the U.S. But Greenland, that's it. Their melt is done for the year. See, this one keeps the snows farther north. So when we get up beyond about 10 days, the models give us a general idea of what's coming, but the specifics remain lost. They're just not there. So we can say, yes, cooler weather is coming, the exact arrival and how much colder. We really can't put the finger on it just yet. But we're beginning to see a significant change up in the north, and then once we get snow painted up here, then that means the atmosphere can get definitely cooler. So one more run, and this will kind of let us know that this is every day. So 16 days, we'll have 16 frames. Actually, it's more like 32 frames because we run it in 12-hour intervals. And it stays warm through the west and the middle part of the nation. I'm going to do this manually. And then there's a slug of cool air. Now, this is temperatures as compared to normal. We get into the greens, and we're between 8 and maybe 16, 15 degrees cooler than normal. In the greens, the blue is 0 to about 8 degrees cooler than normal. So this is what we're looking at. And then the cool air anchors, and these are locations that really need to stay warm with or without rain to get the crops to maturity, because these are just days lost. The plants just sit out there and wait. But it's really Canada that takes the hit with this, as they stay very, very chilly, and their crops just do not move closer to the goalpost, closer to being harvested. So this is going to be a challenge that we talked about early last week, and it still is on the plate, is the much cooler weather on its way to the continent, as we've seen what's happened winter-wise in South Africa with their drought situation being really remedied by some monster winter storms. Their Johannesburg's water reserves were down to about 20%, and they've been refilled, at least the last time I saw, which is about 8 days ago, to about 75, 80% of normal. So these have been big producing storms, and that's good. That's really, really kind of good. It's just what you do with a lot of snow all at once, or a lot of rain all at once. So much of it ends up as runoff rather than soaking in. All right, Don Simmons, greeting Scott from St. Louis, longtime fan since the early 2000s. When's this heat going to dissipate? I hope I kind of answered that. It's coming for you guys. You're far enough south that it's going to be a few days before we get there, but probably by the end of this weekend you'll get your first frontal passage. And I know there's been some crazy weather back in that direction, but good to see you on, Don. Yeah, hang in there. We're going to let you know when that first frost comes for those higher elevations. Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, they'll see it first. Certainly, though, Saskatchewan and folks up in Alberta will be dealing with the cold first. And probably not going to see any more days above 80 degrees. Certainly not above about 75. That's the sun's getting low, and it's sinking lower in the sky faster and faster and faster as we move towards equinox, less than a month away. All right, guys, thanks for stopping in. Throw me some questions in the comments if you want us to hit a topic in a next show. Otherwise, we'll be watching Laura as it makes its approach to the Louisiana-Texas coastline in about 30 hours, and we'll bring that to you tomorrow. All right, thanks for stopping by, and in the meanwhile, keep looking up. Maybe you'll see a UFO. That was really kind of a cool picture, wasn't it? Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that.